Hi, I'm Anna Ornelas with the Whetstone. I interviewed Dr. Michael Nielsen, Professor of Media Arts at Wesley, about his passion for teaching and his colorful past. So first of all, what is your position here at Wesley?
I'm a professor of media arts.
Okay. And how did you begin teaching here?
I started teaching back in 1989. I was hired at the same time my wife was hired. And she taught English and I taught, at that time we called it communications. It was before there was a media arts program.
Okay. How did you end up here at Wesley? What made you
Well,
decide?
my wife and I were both fishing for jobs in the same area at the same time. We were leaving Florida and we didn't want to be in Florida anymore. We were moving away from there. And we saw different jobs in different parts of the country, but this was the only place that was advertising for an English professor and a communications professor at the exact same time. So it was kind of like logical that we at least try it. We tried it, we interviewed and met the people that were here at the time, some of whom are still here, and really liked them and felt like it was a nice kinship, so we decided to come and work here.
Okay, so are you originally from Florida? Is that...
No, I'm actually originally from Chicago.
Okay.
I grew up in Chicago. I went to the University of Illinois, and I was there. And after I finished the University of Illinois as an undergrad, I just stuck. I was a townie, and I lived in town until I was about 34. But during that time, I went back to graduate school and got a PhD in communication, and then went out fishing for jobs and got one down in Florida.
Okay, how different was the college you attended from Wesley?
It was a big university. I don't know, at the time I think there were probably about 30,000 undergraduates and 12,000 graduate students, so it was a huge university. It wasn't unusual to go into a class where there were like television sets in the room instead of professors. And you watched a lecture on a television set that had been taped someplace else. So it was, and of course it was during that time period when I thought would be the way of the future, that you would teach on television. But there were small classes too. There were quiz sections and things like that. But it was very different. You were a small cog in a very big machine back there, whereas Wesley was the first really small school I ever had anything to do with, because when I taught, my first school I taught at full-time was Florida Atlantic University, and that's probably 5,000 students, mostly commuters who don't live on campus. And so that was a much bigger school too. So this was it was very different for me, and it took a while to get used to a small school, a private school. I always either taught or studied at public universities, so it's different.
So you really enjoy teaching?
I love teaching, yeah. I couldn't have, if you had told me when I was your age, when I was an undergrad, that I would end up being in school the rest of my life, I would have probably slit my wrist right then and just ended it all. But as it turned out, it was a good fit. It was a really good fit. For me, it's nice because I work with young people all the time, and so instead of becoming a crotchety old man who's kind of stuck in his ways, I have to constantly deal with new ideas, new ways of looking at things, and adjust. And sometimes I do a good job. Sometimes I'm a bit of a fuddy-duddy and an old man, and it's like, I'm sorry, this thing doesn't, play well with me. And so.
Okay, so what's your favorite class to teach?
I guess media aesthetics. I've always loved to teach it. It's a course. It's the foundation course in media here, and it's fun to watch students who've been grown up watching television, browsing the web, looking at magazines and stuff, suddenly realize, oh, somebody did this, and they did it in a really specific kind of way. They had certain ideas in mind when they did it, that this is the right way to do it, this is the wrong way to do it. Kind of like giving people the code to how the media are put together. It's really fun to, some students come with a really strong background because they went to a high school that had media programs or something like that, and some students come complete blanks. They just think they want to be in show business, and so when you see them, react to the material, it's fun. It really, I think I changed the way people look at the world, and that's what it's about, I guess.
So what's your favorite aspect of the media?
You mean for doing it?
Yeah.
I suppose video production. Yeah, I mean, I've made some videos that I feel like have made that my clients have told me have really made a difference in people's lives. And video is a way to really emotionally move people. Pictures, it's hard to argue against images. So if you show somebody losing their trailer to somebody because they can't afford to live in a place or something like that, and you actually show the trailer being auctioned off, it's a lot more powerful than if I write a news article and just write down those words. because pictures are hard to argue with. So yeah, I guess video production is it's a bit nerdy now because it involves computers, and I definitely have a nerd side that is attracted to computers and manipulating things with computers. So I guess that would be my favorite part of it.
Okay. So have you done any big videos, like, that are just not just for Wesley, but like maybe for the state or for a different state? Or
Yeah, well, the most recent one I made, I think, is I've made videos for Habitat for Humanity, which is an organization that builds houses with homeowners, and I made the original Habitat for Humanity video for Kent County that ended up becoming the way that they recruited volunteers to go out on Saturdays and build people's houses. That was one of my early ones I made here in town. But the one I made most recently is really my favorite because it was about what I was speaking about before. There's a group of people that live in what are called manufactured home communities, and they're like trailers, but they don't really have wheels on them, so they're just parked in a specific place. And these people wanted to get a law passed that said that if a trailer park or a manufactured home community was sold, that the people that lived in those homes would get the right of first refusal, which means they would be allowed to bid on the property so that they didn't have to move and they could own their own property. Because as it turns out, most people who live in manufactured houses don't own the property that their house sits on. So the fact that the landlord can charge them as much rent as they want and they can't do anything about it was kind of sad. And so I made this video for these people. They showed it to people at the Delaware State Legislature, and then after that a law was passed that they've been trying to push through for years that allowed the residents of these manufactured home communities to buy their own places when it came up for sale. And so I felt like, and then the woman wrote back. I actually didn't know all that happened, but I wrote back to the woman that had hired me to work with them, and she said, that's what had happened. So it was like, I finally did something that meant something, and it made people's lives better. So.
Wow. So do you have your students do similar things to that, like try to change parts of like the world, I guess you could say?
That's best case scenario, is that I try to get my students to reach out beyond Wesley and touch somebody in the community, either here or where they live back home. An example would be, my favorite example, which is the best example, is a guy named Mike Short, who's one of our majors. And senior year, he decided to do his senior media project as a video about pollution in the bay behind Rehoboth Beach because of a power plant that was there. It was a coal-fired power plant that was discharging coal-fired waste into the bay, and it was killing fish and other aquatic life. And he made a video about it and then ended up showing it down at the theater in Midway Theaters in Rehoboth, and invited a bunch of people to come to see it. And out of that, they organized a citizens group that began to organize for cleaning up the Back Bay. And that resulted in tighter enforcement by the DENRAC, the Delaware Research, whatever is environmental, I can't remember what it stands for, but it's basically the Environmental Control Agency for Delaware. And they ended up levying big fines on them. DENRAC changed not DENRAC, but the power company, Delmarva Power, changed the way it discharged its effluent into the bay. And so it's like, yeah, that does happen. And that's great when it does,